Hi everyone. This week's Parsha is Parshas Vayechi, which is the last Parsha in Sefer Bereshis. So we know that we just ended off with Yosef and his brothers. He's revealed his identity to them. They are shocked and ashamed, and he reassures them that he's not going to take revenge, no hard feelings. And then again, once his father Yaakov dies, he reassures them a second time that he does not plan to take revenge on them. So he first tests them before he reveals himself, right? He sort of waits to see, have they changed since they sold me into slavery? And because Yehuda sort of offers himself up in place of Binyamin as a slave, they're afraid that Binyamin's going to be kept in Mitzrayim as a slave, he really sees that Yehuda has done teshuvah, he's changed as a person, and he's come a long way since Yosef was 17 years old and Yehuda suggested that they sell him into slavery. And it might sound surprising, but this is actually the first recorded instance of forgiveness in the Torah. There's been a lot of family drama throughout Bereshis, a lot of sibling rivalry, a lot of conflict, but never have any of those conflicts sort of come to a resolution the way that it does right now. And it sort of brings full circle this entire theme of family drama in Bereshis, right? We know of Cain and Hevel, Yitzchak and Yishmael, Yaakov and Esav, Yosef and his brothers, and none of the other scenarios were ever sort of resolved peacefully. And in fact, we know this sort of spiritual conflict between Yaakov and Esav persists to this day. So we see that the brothers were successful in doing teshuvah and acting differently in a similar circumstance. And Yosef was successful, like we said last week, in reframing his experience, being able to access a different perspective and being able to forgive his brothers. And this really is sort of described as the first signs of the birth of Bnei Yisrael as a nation. And as impressive as Yosef's story was thus far, right, everything that he's been through and his unlikely rise to power and the crazy amount of influence and power and wealth that he has amassed, this is really the moment that the Torah values above all else, the resolution between family members where peace is created when there had been conflict. And, despite everything else that's happened, which is sort of amazing in its own right, this is the climax of Bereshis and what the Torah really ends off the entire Sefer with. And we see that a peaceful resolution between family members is what the Torah values more highly than any external success. And even Yosef himself, there are 7 times recorded where Yosef cries bitterly. And in fact, in some of these circumstances, he has to remove himself from the room to have the space to really be emotional. He's overcome with emotion and he's crying. And these 7 circumstances are: 1, when he sees his brothers in Egypt for the first time; 2, when they bring Binyamin to him; 3, when Yehuda insists on taking Binyamin's place as a slave; 4, when he discloses his identity; 5, when he meets his father Yaakov again after their long separation; 6, when his father Yaakov dies; and 7, when he forgives his brothers and reassures them again after Yaakov's death that he's not going to take revenge on them. And never throughout the rest of his ordeal, everything that he's been through, which is so many ups and downs and twists and turns, and it doesn't ever say that he had cried about it or that he was overcome with emotion. So of course, everything happening between his family members was what really spoke to him in a way that all of his other experiences did not. And in Tehillim, it says, Hine ma tova manayim sheva sachim gam yachad. Behold how good and how pleasant it is for brothers to dwell together in unity. And I would sort of add that I don't know if Tehillim would have to point out how pleasant of an experience this is if everybody experienced it all the time. I think it's something that really is pretty rare in some families and is always sort of something to be worked towards actively, but not something to ever be taken for granted. And the central message of Bereshis, and possibly why it ends with this story, is really that, there are so many complex family dynamics, right? The entire Sefer is fraught with complex family dynamics, and not only conflicts between siblings, but disagreements between husband and wife, wayward children, the imaho struggling with infertility, even near murder in the case of Yaakov and Esav, and Yosef and his brothers, and as we know, an actual murder when it comes to Cain and Hevel. And Rabbi Sachs kind of sums it up really nicely. He says, Genesis is not a hymn to the virtue of families. It is a candid, honest, full, worked through account of what it is to confront some of the main problems with families, even the best families. So we all have messy situations. We don't choose what family or time period or circumstances we're born into, and often we react very poorly to the people closest to us. And I once had a therapy client who put it so well. She said, parents and family members know how to push our buttons because they installed them. And I think that's so true for everyone. And when we learn that this moment, the resolution between brothers, that is the birth sort of the nation of Bnei Yisrael, which they will really need, right? This unifying and birth of a nation that they'll really need to be sort of on the same team in order to go into this long Galus Mitzrayim. But the truth is, these brothers have been brothers since birth, right? What's so different about, what the relationship was like in the beginning of their lives and now? And of course, we know, like those kind of like cheesy frames in TJ Maxx that say family by chance, friends by choice, but just being born with the same parents or the same last name or sharing some genetics does not necessarily mean that you're a team. It does not mean that you are a unit. And only through making the active choices, like the brothers did of doing teshuvah and like Yosef did of forgiving them, and choosing, peace, ohev shalom v'rodev shalom, to love peace and to actively chase after peace and to create peace where there is none. That is what it means to unify yourself with family members. And that is what it means to sort of assert yourselves as a nation and to have that protection when you go into challenges. And I think a great takeaway and something that I cannot unlearn after learning Bereshis is that the Avos, as much as and all the biblical personalities, the Imahos, everyone we learned about, they were great people, but they were really real people. And they had so many of the same challenges that we have today. And for us to be able to relate to them, not only as role models, sometimes that seem sort of remote, but as people that are so similar to us, and what they've done and the choices that they made are also possible for us to make. And only through the actions of actively deciding what's important to us, what we value, creating peace where there is none, will we be successful and unified as a nation. Good job, Vis.